It stands there, immovable, imposing, proud. For 135 years, it has withstood storms, wars, revolutions, and even time. But now, it groans. Slowly, silently. Beneath the iron plates that fascinate millions of tourists each year, a dark secret lurks. The structure that once defied the impossible is dying from within. The tower has always seemed eternal, a symbol of human ingenuity, of elegance in steel, of beauty made of nuts and bolts. But the reality is much crueler. Its bones are corroding. The once gleaming iron is being devoured by a relentless enemy, rust. And the whole world continues to gaze at it, take photos, and smile, unaware that what they see is merely a shell, expensive makeup covering a frightening truth. Experts have warned: hidden cracks, compromised structures, paint that no longer protects, and a restoration that, instead of healing, only disguises. Behind the curtain of beauty lurks the decay of a masterpiece, as if a queen wearing a luxurious robe to hide the fact that she can no longer stand unaided. It was built to last 20 years. They extended that period to 135. But the question no one wants to ask echoes like a muffled thunder. Can it hold out any longer? Confidential reports, leaked by alarmed engineers, speak of negligence, political decisions, lack of investment, and above all, widespread ignorance about the true state of the structure. All this while the eyes of the world turn to the city that houses it, preparing for yet another global spectacle. Everything must look perfect. Everything must shine, even if inside, everything is crumbling. Meanwhile, men hanging by ropes try, drop by drop, to repaint the tower as if they could stop the advance of time with paintbrushes, as if a patch were enough to hold back 10,000 tons of corroded iron, as if no one would notice when it's too late. The tower, once called an iron monster, now fights to remain standing. And this fight is no longer against art critics or biting winds. It's against something invisible, silent, yet fatal: abandonment. This isn't just the story of a building. It's the story of what happens when the world falls in love with an image and forgets to care for the soul behind it. It stands on the horizon like a silent sentinel watching the passing of time. But inside, it's no longer the same. What the eyes don't see, the engineers feel in their hands. And what they've found in recent years is alarming. The structure that for more than a century was synonymous with resilience is now on the brink of structural collapse. Not because of bombs or earthquakes, but because of something far more insidious: neglect. Rust doesn't make a fuss. It corrodes silently. And the tower's iron, even though of superior quality to the average for the time, is no longer able to withstand the constant assault of water, wind, and neglect. The monument everyone believes to be untouchable is, in fact, sick. Its bones are brittle. Its joints creak with the weight of years. And most frighteningly, only 5% of its entire structure is being addressed in the current restoration. Experts warn that ideally, at least a third of it is being covered. The paint covering the tower acts as a protective skin, preventing water from directly reaching the iron. But this layer is failing. Cracks are visible in many spots. The old paint, rich in lead and highly toxic, cannot be easily removed, delaying any deeper intervention. Meanwhile, water runs freely through the structure's seams, infiltrating critical areas and feeding the invisible enemy. Oxidation. Internal reports point to severe cracks. There are records of compromised parts, unstable connections, and points of extreme corrosion. In 2010, a report warned of the risk of serious failures. In 2014, another report pointed to negligence in maintenance, and in 2016, a confidential document declared the tower in terrible condition. None of this information was widely publicized. The public continued to take selfies, couples continued to kiss at its feet, and the lights continued to flicker every night. It was business as usual. But the danger was real and growing. The $64 million restoration, rushed into preparation for the Olympics, seems more like a cover-up than a real treatment. It's as if a doctor ignored a tumor and simply covered the spots with makeup. Painters risk hanging from ropes, applying layer upon layer of new paint without even properly treating the old layers. It's a race against time. But no one knows for sure how much time it has left. The tower has no soul. But if it did, perhaps it would be screaming. Perhaps it would be crying out for help. Perhaps it would beg for care, for attention, for respect for its history. It was saved once because of its scientific value. Today, it needs to be saved because of its symbolic value. Because if this giant falls, it won't just be an architectural tragedy. It will be a collective emotional collapse, a brutal reminder that even the strongest icons can crumble when forgotten. When the idea was first presented, it was treated as an aberration, an insult to aesthetics, to tradition, to the artistic soul of the city. Critics called it a metal monstrosity, an industrial chimney, and a national shame. Artists, writers, and intellectuals signed manifestos demanding that this grotesque structure never be built. The outrage was so great that newspapers even published cartoons of the tower devouring the city, spewing smoke, casting a shadow over good taste. No one seemed willing to accept it. It was, for all intents and purposes, a foregone conclusion. The tower's original design envisioned something temporary. It would be merely an ephemeral structure, erected to celebrate the 1889 World's Fair, and then dismantled. 20 years. That was its expiration date. It was as if its creator himself doubted its permanence. And yet, something in those vertical lines, in the boldness of the engineering, in the arrogance of that construction so unlike anything else before, began to provoke an unexpected reaction. The person responsible for this was not the man who conceived the tower, but the engineer who made it possible. Gustave Eiffel. He wasn't the author of the initial design, but he was the one who saw its true potential. When everyone wanted to bury it, Eiffel defended it as if it were his own child. He faced criticism with an almost religious conviction. He asked his opponents, "Don't you see beauty in science? Don't you perceive the elegance of engineering?" He was one man against the world, and he won. Eiffel climbed to the top of the tower at its inauguration and raised the flag as if marking the territory of a new era. And even then, the future of the building remained uncertain. After the concession contract ended in 1909, the structure was to be dismantled. And it almost was. The city was already preparing the documents. But Eiffel once again saw what no one else could. He transformed the tower into a scientific laboratory. He conducted radio transmission tests, meteorological experiments, astronomical observations. He made it useful, irremovable. It was this usefulness, coupled with the dawn of the communications era, that saved the tower from its predicted demise. It began transmitting signals, connecting people, becoming part of the city's invisible infrastructure. And then, as if by magic, the insults fell silent. The manifestos disappeared. And what had once been called a monster came to be seen as a miracle. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. It took years of resistance, criticism, and threats. Eiffel died without knowing that his creation would become one of the world's greatest symbols. And perhaps, had he lived longer, he would have watched with sadness how it would be treated in the future, admired on the outside, forgotten on the inside. The tower was born to be temporary. It fought to exist. It survived hatred, abandonment, and ignorance. And today, when it seems more eternal than ever, it once again faces a silent threat. It's no longer artistic contempt that surrounds it, but technical neglect. And ironically, what threatens it most today is the same neglect that nearly killed it in the beginning. The world had never seen anything like it, not only in height, but in concept. The tower wasn't made of stone or marble. It had no Greek columns or ornamental details. It was raw, exposed iron, designed to be functional. And yet, it was beautiful. An architectural paradox, a steel sculpture that seemed alive, that breathed with the wind, that changed with the light, that trembled with footsteps. And behind it all, there was calculation, precision, vision. Gustave Eiffel didn't just build a tower, he rewrote the rules of engineering. His greatest inspiration? Trees, specifically oak trees. Eiffel studied how trunks branched, how they distributed weight, how they withstood storms, and he applied these principles to the tower's structure. Every curve, every slope, every iron connection was designed to dissipate forces, to resist the wind, to support its own weight elegantly. The tower features 18,038 pieces of wrought iron, known as puddle iron, which is extremely resistant to traction. But the secret wasn't just the material, it was the way it was assembled. Nothing was improvised. Each piece was prefabricated in workshops and shipped to the construction site with millimeter precision. The holes for the screws were already pre-drilled. It was like assembling a huge iron puzzle, where every misfit compromised the structure, and nothing was left to chance. Construction began in July 1887. In just 22 months, the tower was standing. This, in an era without computers, modern cranes, or digital technology. The cranes were mounted on rails and rose with the tower. It was as if the structure itself were self-supporting. And all this with a lean, well-trained team led with a firm hand. The pace was relentless, but the organization was almost military. The tower was erected with 4 coats of dark red paint, not for aesthetics, but for protection. Eiffel knew that rust would be his greatest enemy and took every possible precaution to combat it. The painting was meticulous, done in stages, with every screw checked by hand. In the end, the structure weighed over 10,000 tons, yet still conveyed a lightness. It was as if it defied gravity with elegance. And there was another revolutionary detail: flexibility. The tower was designed to move. It sways in the wind. It expands in the heat. It contracts in the cold. This adaptability is what keeps it alive today. Eiffel understood that absolute rigidity leads to rupture, and that true strength lies in the ability to adjust without breaking. The tower was a miracle of its time, a technical feat so ahead of its time that many modern engineers still marvel at its precision. But there's a cruel irony in all this. What was designed to withstand the test of time now suffers precisely because of the passage of time, and because of the way we've stopped treating engineering with the same reverence we treat beauty. Painting the tower was never a matter of aesthetics. From day one, it was a battle against time, against water, against the oxygen that insists on oxidizing everything. Eiffel knew this, so much so that the first coat applied was a dark, almost rusty red, designed precisely to camouflage any early signs of corrosion. Then came ochre yellow, brown, and finally, the tan tone we know today, carefully adjusted to harmonize with the sky at different times of day. But the truth is, no color can hide the fragility of a failed protection. The tower was to be repainted every 7 years. That was the original plan, a strict, almost sacred schedule that would guarantee the integrity of the metal. For decades, it was strictly followed. But in recent years, the intervals have lengthened. Budgets have been cut. Political decisions have taken over, and maintenance has ceased to be a priority. What was meant as prevention has become belated correction. What was meant as care has become improvisation. The current restoration, billed as the most expensive in the tower's history, around $64 million, should have been a milestone. But what we're seeing, according to experts, is a red herring. Only 5% of the structure is being effectively treated. This means that more than 9,000 tons of iron remain exposed to the same degradation process that has already compromised several parts. The most critical areas, according to leaked reports, aren't even receiving any real attention. Everything needs to look new for the world's cameras. But it isn't. And it's not just rust that's threatening. The old paint covering part of the structure contains lead at alarming levels. Removing it requires expensive, dangerous, and time-consuming procedures. Sandblasting, for example, could release toxic particles into the air. So the solution has been to apply new layers over the old ones. Like a bandage on an infected wound, the problem remains. Hidden. Growing. The pandemic has made everything worse. Construction work halted, resources diverted, logistics compromised. While the world shut down, the tower remained exposed. Without constant surveillance, without proper maintenance, without regular technical inspections, the accumulated delay further compromised the structure's integrity. And in the midst of all this, international pressure mounted. The city needed to be impeccable for the Olympic Games. And what was once a technical emergency became a media frenzy. The painters, hanging from ropes like urban climbers, continue to apply brushstrokes to a 324-meter-high surface. They use mobile scaffolding, follow centuries-old techniques, and risk themselves daily in a nearly invisible job. But even with all their effort, they know they're not saving the tower. They're just buying time, and time, in this case, is not on their side. The paint has always been the tower's armor. But now, it's just makeup, a shiny covering over a weakened body. And perhaps the most painful thing is realizing that all of this could have been avoided. With planning, with respect for engineering, with the courage to face the problems before they became irreversible threats. It's not just a tower, it's an idea, a feeling, a reflection of what human beings can create when they combine ambition, boldness, and precision. For over a century, it has been the setting for romances, declarations of love, farewells, and reunions. Millions of lives have intersected in its surroundings. It has become a postcard, a symbol, an identity. And because of all this, it has come to seem eternal. But this illusion is dangerous, because even the most immortal icons can crumble. And perhaps we are about to see that happen. The tower generates around 100 million euros a year. Between ticket sales, licensing, and indirect tourism, its presence drives a powerful economy. But this revenue machine comes at a cost, a high one and a growing one. The structure requires constant maintenance, reinforced security, monitoring technology, and investment in conservation. And, in recent decades, the numbers haven't been adding up as they should. Revenue hasn't been enough to cover its true needs. Amid this impasse, difficult decisions have been made. Renovations have been postponed. Projects have been scaled back. Teams have been reduced. The tower, once the absolute pride of a nation, has begun to compete for budget space with other priorities. And, slowly, it lost the technical prominence its complexity demands. Experts speak, write, and warn. But the answers come in generic statements, political promises, and palliative measures. Gustave Eiffel believed that the tower's true value lay not in its height or visual impact. It lay in what it represented: the triumph of reason over prejudice, of science over skepticism, of boldness over fear. When he defended its creation, he wasn't just asking for it to be left standing. He was asking for it to be looked at with respect, to understand what it meant to have a monument that was not only beautiful, but functional, alive, dynamic. Today, the tower still fulfills part of this mission. It transmits radio and television signals, serves as a reference point for navigation systems, and remains a showcase for engineering. But if it continues to be forgotten, it will cease to fulfill all of these. And what will come in its place will not just be a physical absence. It will be a symbolic void, an open wound in the collective memory. Perhaps it won't fall suddenly. Perhaps there won't be a dramatic collapse, nor an international scandal. Most likely, it will be closed. First for a few days, then for weeks, and at some point, indefinitely. For safety, as a precaution, until someone decides it's no longer worth trying to save, that it's easier to let it die slowly. But while it's still standing, there's time. Time to act. Time to remember what it represents. To demand that its story not end by omission. Because if we allow such a powerful symbol to disintegrate before our eyes, what else are we willing to let crumble? The tower was born to be temporary. It fought to exist, and it survived its own death sentence. Now, more than a century later, it doesn't need applause. It needs action, and a renewed commitment to what it has always symbolized, the best of our ability to imagine and to build. If this story touched you in any way, if you also believe that some symbols deserve to be protected, then like this video, leave a comment saying what the Eiffel Tower means to you. And subscribe to the channel, because here, each story is an invitation to feel something real. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.